Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some injury updates, a couple of waiver updates, some other call-ups and send-downs, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Ducks, the Wild, and the San Jose Sharks. We'll touch on all three of these trade rumors coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So once again, we got another news and rumor video here to discuss. Before we get into the actual news and rumor and stuff portion of the video, I want to take a quick moment here to announce that I got my last two pennants that I ordered. I showed you in a couple of videos ago that we got the Utah Mammoth. I now have two more new pennants. That is the Carolina Hurricanes pennant and the Vegas Golden Knights pennant. So I now have two more teams. The only teams I'm currently missing right now from the pennants or flags, whatever you want to call them, are the Seattle Kraken, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Nashville Predators. Those are only four teams I do not have in the pennant form. And then I guess you can say the current Avalanche and Stars because they only have the North Stars and the Nordiques. So very interesting note there, but we now have 26 of the actual team's logos and the pennant form, and we're only missing 6 and 4 that we don't even have at all. So very interesting note there, but we got the Canes and the Knights. So once again, for future videos, trade rumors, trade trees, trade videos, game recaps that involve these two teams, those flags will be back up there. So definitely don't forget to check out future videos because they will be up there at some point. But getting back to today's video, so we got some very interesting news and rumors we're here to discuss. We're not going to do any sort of signings because there haven't been any signings or trades or anything like that over the past couple of days. So we're going to start off by talking about a couple of injury updates. So a few injury updates here. Jason Zucker, who had been out 3 weeks with a illness, was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Friday. Big boost to the Sabres top 9 to get Zucker back. Samuel Honchik has undergone an upper body procedure that will likely make him miss most of the rest of the regular season. There's a very likely chance he could be done for the season as well, which would be an awful blow. Honchik surprisingly made the training camp roster, and after a really solid training camp, it's done all right in season. But having it end this early, if this is the end of the season for him, is awful. So that's a bad blow there for Honchik. Jalen Chatfield, who had been out multiple weeks with upper body injury, was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Friday. Big boost to the Hurricanes decor to get Chatfield back. Andrei Burakovsky didn't play on Friday for the Blackhawks and is out day to day with undisclosed injury. Bad blow there for the Hawks, as Burakovsky's been pretty solid. Top 9 forward all season long for the Hawks. Nikita Prishchepov, who started the season on season opening injury reserve, was activated and sent to the minors. So the Avs have enough healthy bodies in the forward group that don't need Prishchepov, so he's going to go get some minor league time. Not too surprising, as he's a guy who's waivers ineligible at this point. So very interesting note there. Noah Philp, who was placed in injury reserve recently due to an upper body injury, was actually transferred to long-term injury reserve. I think it was on Friday or earlier today. So very interesting note there. Philp is a decent bottom 6 forward, so he's going to miss at least a little bit of time now, probably the next couple of weeks. That's a bad blow there for the Oilers. Vladimir Tarasenko, who had missed 3 games, was placed on injury reserve with a lower body injury, so not great news there. He is eligible to return whenever he's able to get activated, but still it's a bad blow there for the Wild to see Vladimir Tarasenko currently out. Zach Bogosian, who had been out for over a month with a lower body injury, was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Friday, while Nico Sturm, who hasn't played at all this year due to a back injury, was activated off of injury reserve, and he should be able to make his season debut tomorrow on Sunday. So very interesting note there, but it's a big boost there for the Wild to get Bogosian back and potentially even Sturm in the very near future, even though it's a bad blow to lose Vladimir Tarasenko. Jake Neighbors, who had a leg injury, was activated off of injury reserve and returned on Thursday after being out a month. So he was scheduled to be back in early December, so he's about a week and a half, a couple of weeks ahead of schedule. So that's a really big boost there for the Blues to get Jake Neighbors back. Victor Hedman was placed in injury reserve with undisclosed injury and will miss a few more weeks. He's already missed, like, I think a week and a half, 2 weeks. So it's a bad blow there for the Bulls, but not too surprising, just to allow some more roster flexibility. Hedman's been placed in injury reserve. Eric Chernak missed his 2nd consecutive game on Thursday with undisclosed injury. Bad blow there for the Bolts, as Chernak's a really solid top 4 defenseman, and with Hedman out, he's a really big piece of that top 4, so not great news. And Nick Paul, who had an upper body procedure in the preseason, was actually off of long-term injury reserve, made his season debut on Thursday. Great news there for the Tampa Bay Lightning to get Nick Paul back, so really good stuff there. Scott Lawn, who missed the past 2 weeks with upper body injury, will return to gain action on Thursday. Big boost boost there for the Leafs to get solid first liner Scott Laughton back. However, Anthony Stolarz' injury was worse than first thought, and he's going to be out a little bit longer than initially Maple Leafs were expecting, so not great news there, as they're going to have to rely on Wolf for the next little bit. Well, Nick Waugh, who has missed a week or so with the upper body injury, was placed in injury reserve, so no concrete timeline when he's going to be back either, but that's a really bad blow to see him go on injured reserve. Sean Durzi, who has missed over a month now for the Utah Mammoth with undisclosed injury, is now out day to day, so his status has been upgraded from week to week to day to day, so he should be nearing a return in the very near future. That could be a big boost there for the Utah Mammoth decor. And Connor Hellebuyck will undergo arthroscopic knee procedure and be out the next 4 to 6 weeks. That is a awful blow for the Jets. So Hellebuyck won't probably be back until the earliest, just after Christmas, maybe not even until the new year. So it's a bad blow there for the Jets to see Connor Hellebuyck go down with an injury. They have a solid goalie in Comrie who can hold down the fort for now, but still, it's not great news there for the Winnipeg Jets to have Hellebuyck out for the foreseeable future. So bad stuff there for the Jets. Very interesting note there. Those are some very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to some recalls, some reassignments, and some waiver updates. So not too much to talk about here when it comes to some recalls. Jason Paul in Colorado, as well as Tristan Nielsen in Colorado, Brendan Gaunce in Columbus, Connor Clattenburg in Edmonton, and Florian Xhekaj in Montreal were all recalled by their respective teams, while Delba will lose in Columbus, Fensler in Carolina, Copley in LA, Yurchek in Minnesota, Edwards in New Jersey, and Skinner in St. Louis were all sent back down to the AHL. So very interesting note there. Not too surprising that the Blues sent Skinner down. With Neighbors coming back, they needed someone to be sent down to the minors, so very interesting note there. Edwards was sent down because Connor Brown and Evgeny Dodonov are nearing returns, so really great news there. So they didn't need Edwards at the NHL level anymore, so they sent him to the minors. David Yurchek was sent down because of the activations of Bogosian and Sturm. Copley was sent down just because they didn't need a third stringer anymore, so they sent him down. Fensler was sent down by the Hurricanes because of the activation of Chatfield, so not too surprising there. The Jackets swapped Delba Blues for Gonsu. Delba Blues should be able to get some more playing time at the AHL level, while Gonsu is a decent fourth line forward, gets called up to be a solid player for the NHL team, so very interesting note there. With some of the Habs injuries, they call it Florian Xhekaj, so we should potentially even see the Xhekaj brothers play later today, which would be very interesting to see. Connor Clattenburg, who's had a pretty solid start to the AHL season, was recalled because Noah Philp was placed on long-term injury reserve. They have a couple of injured bodies right now, so they could use some more sort of fuel in their system, so they call up Clattenburg. It also makes sense why they're calling him up right now, because they're about to play in the Stanley Cup rematch against the Florida Panthers, so very interesting note there. Well, Tristan Nielsen and Jason Paul were recalled by the Colorado Avalanche, so very interesting note there. I'm not sure if either of these two will get into playing time, but still very interesting note there. Both of these guys were called up by the Avalanche, so very interesting note there. Lastly, going over to a couple of waiver updates. A couple of days ago, we saw Mason Gertson in Buffalo and Alex Texier in St. Louis on waivers. There was some talk that Texier didn't like being placed on waivers and he won't report to the AHL. If that's the case, it sounds like a contract termination might be in place, so we'll have to wait and see on that, but there is a possibility out there. Alex Texier could be placed on unconditional waivers in a couple of days, so something we're going to have to watch out for. But Texier did place on and clear waivers, so very interesting out there. I think he's making just over 1 million. I think it's like 1.4, 1.5 million, so very interesting note there. When it comes to Mason Gertson, he was placed on waivers because of the activation of Jason Zucker, so they wanted to get him into the AHL level. He's more of an AHL level guy at this point in time. I'm surprised he made the training camp roster, so very interesting note there, but he cleared. I don't think it's too much of a surprise either. So Mason Gertson in Buffalo and Alex Texier in St. Louis were both placed on and cleared waivers, so very interesting note there. Well, there is one new player on waivers currently as it sits right now, and that is Elliotte Friedman in Ottawa. He's been a decent fourth liner, spare forward for the Ottawa Senators, but it sounds like they could be getting a little more healthier. Brady Tkachuk could be back soon. Stephen Holiday had a really good debut a couple days ago, so with all that in mind, the Sens seem like they don't need someone who's more of an expendable piece, so he was placed on waivers. I don't know the exact result at this current point in time, but I would say he probably clears. There might be a team or two out there who are in desperate need of some bottom six forward help, who I could see claiming Lycksell, but I think more than likely he will be wind up clearing, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But the waiver updates, Gertson and Texier have cleared waivers, and there's a possibility Texier could be placed in unconditional waivers in the coming days, something we'll have to keep our eye on, while Elliotte Friedman is currently on waivers, and I do think he'll wind up clearing, so very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. When it comes to some trade rumors, we got a couple of things to talk about here. First, with the Minnesota Wild, according to Chris Johnston recently, he says that Ryan Hartman is a trade candidate and could be dealt, as he has a 15-team no trade list. Now, when the Wild were doing a little bit worse early on in the season, I was looking at potential free agents and guys like could be dealt at the trade deadline if the Wild weren't able to pick up the pace. And there weren't really a whole bunch, but Hartman was an interesting name. I think he's in the second year of a 3 or 4 year deal with the AV of just over $4 million. It's not an overly expensive deal, and he's a really decent like center/right winger, and he can play middle 6 minutes. So like I wasn't expecting him to be a potential trade candidate, but with the Wild not picking up the pace, if they want to try and add something at the trade deadline to try and make a push for playoffs this coming trade deadline, then they're going to need to subtract someone off the roster, because there's a lot of players out there, really good players, but they all cost a whole bunch of money, and I think the Wild, our team, is probably going to have to be money in, money out sort of things. So the current pending UFAs or players like that, like a Johansson or a Bogosian, wouldn't really push the needle for like a money in, money out sort of deal. So Ryan Hartman could be that sort of a guy. Like I said, he's a decent player. He's a solid middle 6 guy. He's versatile. He can play center. He can play wing. I could see definitely a whole bunch of teams have some interest in him, whether that be trying to package him as part of a big package to go after some sort of a huge upgrade, or that's just moving him in a separate deal to create the money to go after one of these big pieces. I'm not exactly sure, but it does make sense in my opinion as to why Hartman could be on the roster, because I think he's one of the few tradable pieces the Wild do currently have on their team. So we shall wait and see on that. I don't think it's a guarantee by any means Hartman gets moved, but if the Wild are going to sort of go for it and try and add some pieces at this year's trade deadline, they're going to have to do the money in, money out thing. And Hartman, with his only 15-team no trade list, and given the fact he's also on a longer term deal with, I think, 2-3 years left on his current contract, I think it might make sense to try and move on from him. So we shall wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Ryan Hartman, especially if the Minnesota Wild want to try and get some sort of a big upgrade. I would definitely keep your eye on Ryan Hartman as potential like cap dump for the Minnesota Wild, so we should wait and see on that. Next, going over to David Pagnotta. He was talking about the San Jose Sharks, and I completely agree with this. He says that even after the good start, the San Jose Sharks are still open to moving pending UFAs. He says they acquired Ryan Ellis and Carey Price in the offseason for a reason. They want to try and move some pending UFAs, try and recoup some assets, and try and get this team a little bit younger and a little bit better, so maybe next year they can go after it. Now, they've had a blistering start to the season. I think at the recording of this video, they are 10-3. They just hit the 20-game mark. They're 2 games above 500, so they're not doing half bad. So I think a couple of people out there have said that maybe because of this hot start, they don't sell off a whole bunch of pieces, but I sort of see them as being a team who, if they're like 5, 6, 7 points out of a playoff spot come the trade deadline, which I fully do expect, I think they're a good team, but I think they're heavily leaning on Celebrini. I don't think this sort of production is currently sustainable for the San Jose Sharks to be a good team. So with all of that in mind, I do think they will fall off at least a little bit to the point where they're at the trade deadline. They will move off a couple of pieces because they have a plethora of UFAs. Like, I could see the Hawks be more of a team who's a little more content to not do much at the trade deadline because they don't have a whole bunch of pending UFA contracts. I think even if the Sharks are close to a playoff spot, not too far out, they will still move off some of their UFAs. They have like 5 UFA defensemen that I think David Pagnotta mentioned. That's Mario Ferraro, Liljegren, Klingberg, Leddy, Desharnais, who they could all try and move. We've also heard some talk about pending UFA Wenberg on the forward group. I think they also have a couple of other pending UFA forwards as well, and Alex Nedeljkovic in net. So I'm not going to say it's a guarantee by any means that the Sharks go full sell mode, but I think at the very least they'll sell maybe 2 to 3 defensemen, maybe like 3 to 4 trades and trade off a couple of pieces. I don't think they will subtract too much given how well this team has done if they can be able to sustain this, but I just don't think this team is going to be a playoff team this year, and I think it'll be a very smart move for the Sharks to deal off some of these pending UFAs, recoup a little bit of assets, try and finish the season strong, and then use those assets to try and get better in the offseason. So we shall wait and see on that. No guarantees by any means that the Sharks go full sell mode or don't do anything, but personally I do think the Sharks will move a couple of pending UFAs at this year's trade deadline, and it seems like David Pagnotta also mentions that even after the good start, the Sharks' plan is still to move off at least a couple of pieces, so we shall wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the Anaheim Ducks. According to Elliotte Friedman recently, I think it was the first person who touched on this. I think since then Chris Johnston's mentioned this. It might have been from Frank Saravalli, David Pagnotta as well. They are saying that Pavel Mintyukov, who's been a healthy scratch the past couple of games for the Anaheim Ducks, is not too happy with his current usage in the lineup, being a healthy scratch. So with that in mind, Friedman does say, and I think the other insiders have also echoed this, if he can't get back into the lineup, he wants to trade out of there. No, he hasn't requested a trade yet, and there's still some time for the Anaheim Ducks to put him back in the roster and for him to be happy. But with him continually getting healthy scratched, it's leading a lot of people to think there's a very likely chance Mintyukov could be moved. Now, the Ducks could try and move him to try and recruit a couple of assets. That's a possibility. They could also try and move him as part of a big package to get some sort of a big upgrade, because Mintyukov is a really solid piece. I think long-term he still has the potential to be a solid top 4 defenseman. I just think that there's too many solid defensemen on the Ducks roster right now, and that's why he's sort of getting bumped out of his role. So, I don't think it's a guarantee by any means the Ducks try and move off of Mintyukov, but I think if he continues to get healthy scratched, he's going to get tired of not playing at the NHL level. So I think it's a possibility, but not a guarantee at this point in time. If the Ducks were to move him, I think the best offers they could probably get would be like a 2nd round pick, maybe a 3rd round pick and decent prospect. Like I said, they could try and move him in a trade package to get some sort of a big improvement on their blue line or up front. I think that's also a possibility, but it's a very interesting situation we're going to have to keep our eye on, because if Mintyukov continues to get healthy scratch and is not able to get into playing time at the NHL level, I think we could very likely see a Mintyukov deal, and I would not be one bit surprised if it was in maybe a bigger package to try and get the Ducks a massive upgrade. So we should wait and see on that. But that's all I'm going to talk for today. I left you guys thoughts. Is Mintyukov going to get moved by the Anaheim Ducks? Is Hartman going to get moved by Minnesota Wild? And do the Sharks still deal some pending UFAs before this year's trade deadline? Definitely my thoughts on all of that, plus all the waivers, the recalls, the reassignments, and the injuries from our past couple of days. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. If you'd like to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. I also have a blog to went news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll link that down in the description below. Come see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.